Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. I am Olakunle Kasumo. It's the start of the next 21 years for Channel's television, and on the Channel's Book Club, we are thrilled to serve you with more exciting episodes as we continue our journey in professional broadcasting. Well, 2016 is gradually winding down. It has been a loaded year for us here. In the last 2 episodes for the year, we'll be focusing on going down the 2016 memory lane and also introducing to you our top 20 Nigerian books for 2016. But today we have 2 authors in the house. One is a young man who is certainly one of the emerging voices in the African literary space. The other is a 12-year-old author whose future looks as bright as a shining star. Let's start with Jowhor and his book titled And After Many Days.
During the rainy season of 1995, in the bustling town of Port Harcourt, Nigeria, one family's life is disrupted by the sudden disappearance of 17-year-old Paul Utu, beloved brother and son. As they grapple with the sudden loss of their darling boy, they embark on a painful and moving journey of immense power which changes their lives forever and shatters the fragile ecosystem of their once ordered family. Ajay, the youngest sibling, is burdened with the guilt of having seen Paul last and convinced that his vanished brother was betrayed long ago. But his search for the truth uncovers hidden family secrets and reawakens old, long-forgotten ghosts as rumors of police brutality, oil shortages, and frenzied student protest serve as a backdrop to his pursuit. And after many days, tightly weaves together personal and political loss until inevitably the 2 threads become nearly indistinguishable. It is a story of childhood, of the delicate, complex balance between the powerful and the powerless, and a searing portrait of a community as the old order gives way to the new.
Jowhor, thank you for joining us on Channel's Book Club.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you. And congrats on your book, And After Many Days.
Thank you.
Well done. Before we dig into this novel, let's get to know Jowhor a little bit. You grew up in Port Harcourt, right?
Yes.
Is that where your love affair, if I may put it that way, with books and writing started?
Exactly, in Port Harcourt. Yeah, in the house I grew up in, there were books in the house, and I think reading was encouraged when I was growing up. And I think I still talk to people who've been my friends from when I was little, and there was a real culture of reading then, and people were exchanging, even though we didn't have libraries in Port Harcourt. Well, we probably had libraries, but there were, people didn't go there to take out books. But we borrowed books, we swapped books, and reading was, was part of popular culture, if you like. So.
And you could have gone into writing so many other things. Why did you pick creative writing? Why did you pick fiction?
Why did I pick fiction? I don't know if I picked it. It's just something you do. It happens. You find yourself
natural.
Yeah, you find yourself writing. So it's not a very conscious process in that way. Like I was writing. I remember when I was probably in boarding school, writing short stories, putting them in notebooks, giving titles. Probably, plagiarizing people I was reading as well. So. It's not something you think about, or at least I didn't think about, oh, now I'm going to become a writer. But it just happened. I was writing for a while.
And there are so many of you now, imagine, from that axis in Nigeria. Very, very talented writers.
What axis is
well,
this?
Yeah, I mean, the what we might call Nigeria South.
I've heard that it's in the water.
Or Niger Delta.
It's in the water we drink.
Yeah, I mean, I read Otuke's book, Conspiracy of Ravens.
Yeah, I have not read it.
You've not read that
book?
book?
No, I have not. It's on my list.
Great book. And quite a number. I like what is going on right now because most of you are putting your stories within Nigerian settings, and those stories are helping to explain those settings or those histories of Nigeria in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like Otuke's book, there's a bit of the Boko Haram story and then the Niger Delta crisis story, and all that. But not just those of you from that part of Nigeria. There's Edefai Yakusak, who wrote After the Left. I like the way she set her own story within the Jos crisis.
Yeah, but it's
so
interesting
many-
when you say that because all the things you've raised are like places where things are happening, probably linked to trauma. And there is a sort of theory about stories coming out of places where there's trauma. I think Shoyinka even said something like that about, since after the war, that there have been stories because, it's linked to trauma. And if you look at what happened, the Jews in Germany, after that, after the Holocaust, there were loads of stories came out of there. But and it's not my theory. I'm just saying that that's
okay.
making me think.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, and after many days, tell us a bit about this.
About the
What's
book.
this novel about?
It's the story of a family. It's also the story of a society. Now, this story, at the beginning of this story, somebody gets missing, but that's not really it's not only about a missing person. It's a story about a family. It's set mostly in the 80s and the 90s in Port Harcourt. So for me, the story is really about many things. It's about the way we live now. It's about, life in Nigeria. It's about life in Port Harcourt. It's rooted very much in social reality and in history. So yeah, it's about many things. It's hard for me to say, oh, this is the one thing this story is about. There is some politics, oil politics, but it's only at the background of this story. And it's really because this story is set in a particular place, and I wanted it to be true. So I explored a lot of things, So from knowing what was on TV, say in 1991, I wanted to be sure about it. I wanted to know what people were striking about when there was no fuel, what was it about? So almost to recreate the life.
Are you one of those writers who writes because you're on a mission? You want to address societal issues, or you are primarily an entertainer?
I
and
write-
You just find the parts of our history that fit in.
I write sometimes because I cannot sleep at night. And I know it sounds a bit corny, but it is true. So things that happen, they affect me. It's my, so entertainment is hardly entertainment at all.
It's hardly entertainment for
It's
you.
hardly entertainment. I mean, I hope people get entertained at least. I like to be funny. So it's not one thing. I like, I have my obsessions about things, about life, but also I want, there's language as well. You want to please with language, you want to entertain, but you want to make people think, So you can do many things with writing, and I'm hoping, if it's a good book, that it will be nourishing. It can make somebody think. It can also make somebody, laugh.
So can you please read an interesting part of your book?
All right. I'm reading from And After Many Days, page 93, and this is a part where the children are sort of having an ordinary afternoon, and this part really captures sort of the kind of sibling rivalry which was, in this book. When he returned from the parlor, Bibi had put aside the newspaper and was reading a shoddily printed copy of Fufuru that they found while rummaging through Fola's garage, and were now taking turns reading by order of seniority. When are you going to finish the book? Ajay asked Bibi. Just about 5 pages left. Bibi thumbed through what was left of the book. It's so interesting. Should I tell you the story? No. You can be so grumpy sometimes. Why? I don't want to hear, Ajay said, and then threw the second ice cube into his mouth and began to crunch it. Bibi couldn't hold herself back. It's about this marvelous Uguta woman. Oh, I really like her. She was very beautiful and loved by her husband. But she was barren and her mother-in-law didn't like her. You're just looking for trouble, Paul said to Bibi. Well, it's not as if I'm going to spoil it for him. It's so tragic, Bibi purred and sank back into the sofa. Okay, I'll just say this one thing and leave it there. I think someone dies at the end. Ajay looked at her. He would refuse to read the book just to spite her. He imagined she would feel something as sharp as pity mixed with guilt, and she would try to make it up to him somehow, but he wouldn't give her the chance. Do you know, Bibi was already saying to Paul, that in France, crimes of passion are forgiven. I read something like that in one of Benedict's journal. There was a woman who killed her husband with a fork during an argument, and she wasn't jailed for murder. Temporary insanity, Paul said. But it depends on the circumstance and on many other things. Port Harcourt is not Paris, Ajay quipped at Bibi. True. Nigeria is not France, like he hadn't made his point. Years later, each time he heard crime of passion, he would think of a woman in Paris with a fork in her hand. But more than that, he would think of the woman in a story Ma had told them. A story that sounded like it happened in the olden days, but which Ma said only took place after the war. There was this woman from Erema who would leave her husband and move in with a man whose house was on the further side of the same village. As was the custom, leaving your husband in that way was an accepted, if reproachable way for a woman to initiate divorce. This woman would leave her husband and stay with the second man for many days, sometimes a whole year. Her people would put pressure on her and she would return to her husband, but soon after the affair would resume. Her husband sent emissaries to beg the man to leave his wife alone, but nothing changed. One day, the man took a machete and chopped off the head of his wife's lover. Then he carried the head and walked the whole length of the village. And each time he met someone, he asked, "This thing I've done, is it good or is it bad?" And the person would answer, "It is right what you have done, it is good." And when he reached the end of the village, he killed himself, exactly what was expected of a man who had taken the life of another.
How long did it take you to write this?
Altogether, probably about 3 years. I have to look at I have to think about it. The first draft took me about 1.5 years to write. And of course, there was, I had to rewrite some of it. And
okay.
yeah, so probably 3 years, more or less.
Your first novel?
Yes, my first
novel. Published novel?
Yes.
What was the experience like?
I thought I should have a novel out in 1 year, but obviously writing takes a lot of time. So I learned patience from writing this, and also, do you mean how did it get published?
I'm guessing the experience made you appreciate all the writers whose works you ever read.
Absolutely. I mean, now I'm just I think I'm kinder to writers now because it's difficult. No, I'm not trying to complain, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot from you as well. But it's your job, I suppose. So you can't complain.
Did you have Nigerian readers in mind when you wrote this, primarily?
I don't know about primarily. I'm happy for anyone at all who can read to read me. But in my mind, of course, I'm thinking about myself first. I want to write something that pleases me, first of all. And then I'm thinking about people I know in life. So I'm thinking, oh, what will my, so, but you do that after the fact, after writing. When I'm writing, I'm not thinking about anything at all. The story needs to work. I was speaking about this earlier. I think writing is really a psychological state of mind. You're somewhere and you want something. It's happening. You're up at night. When I was writing this, I didn't know it was going to get published.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't know. I didn't have.
You didn't set out to write this.
Yeah. So it's very risky business to invest so much of yourself in something. But I don't think I could have helped it as well.
Jowhor, thank you very much for joining us on Channels Book Club.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.